Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. In tonight's episode, what we'll be discussing is the Detroit Pistons draft selection of Stanford point guard Ebuka Okorie, breaking down the trade that the Pistons did make with the Memphis Grizzlies. We also reading some quotes. Ebuka Okorie was able to talk on the phone with the Detroit Pistons credential media member. So we did pull a few quotes from that short interview that he did have. Trajan Langdon also talked to the media after the pick, talking about Ebuka Okorie. I'm just going to give you guys my reactions with this pick. And do the Pistons possibly trade in the second round? There are some players that I thought were going to go in the late first round and they're still available. So should be a really fun podcast. I do apologize that it is out a little bit later than I would like. Currently, as I'm recording, it is 1:13 in the morning. So by the time everything processes on YouTube and on the audio, might be up around 2 a.m. So if you guys are up and you're looking for it, I truly appreciate it. Or maybe you'll see it in the morning on your way to work or whenever you guys do have time to listen and watch this. So let's kind of break down the trade. Now, Memphis did have the 16th overall pick in this draft. So what Memphis did first was they called OKC because OKC had 17 and said, "Hey, can we like swap picks?" And that's what they did. OKC gave them 2 second-round picks to swap from 16 to 17. The Detroit Pistons called Memphis and said, "Hey, we'll give you 3 future 2nd-round picks if you give us 17." Now, I mentioned earlier that the Detroit Pistons had 15 second-round picks at their disposal, and they could use some of those to trade up in the draft. That's what they did. So now they have 12 future second-round picks after this trade. So the full trade details, excuse me. The Detroit Pistons receive Ebuka Okorie, 17th overall. The Memphis Grizzlies receive 3 future 2nd-round picks by the Detroit Pistons, and they swap picks with Memphis. So they picked 21, and Memphis selected Kareem Lopez, 21st overall. And I think what's really interesting about Memphis's selection is Kareem Lopez was supposed to be a lottery pick, and he slipped down to 21. My guy Cameron Carr actually slipped to the Lakers pick at 25. I was really shocked that Cameron Carr was actually still on the board, but I do want to focus on Ebuka Okorie. I'm sure a lot of you guys were shocked as well that Cameron Carr slipped, but I did want to kind of touch on it for like maybe 5 seconds. I'm still shocked, but this is the full trade details. Again, Pistons get Ebuka Okorie. Memphis got 3 seconds from the Detroit Pistons and 2 seconds from OKC. So Memphis came away with 5 seconds. And they got their guy, Kareem Lopez. Memphis actually had a pretty good draft, I would say, on day one. But that was the trade for Ebuka Okorie. Now, I do have some overall thoughts with this selection. I know a lot of Pistons fans right now are very reactionary, and that's completely understandable. It's human nature. I think in the moment, a lot of times we think with our emotions, and that's completely fine. I'm not under the same opinion as some Pistons fans on Twitter right now. I'm just not. You go on Twitter right now, it's just pitchforks, absolute pitchforks, because they don't like that Ebuka Okorie is a 6'2" guard. Being generous, I think he's 6'1". We'll have to wait to see what his measurements are. But they weren't really in love with the process of, one, giving up 3 second-round picks to go from 21 to 17. Two, drafting a guard when your guard rotation is Cade Cunningham, Danish Jenkins, Marcus Sasser. It's June 24th, you guys, okay? We really don't know what this roster is going to look like. Right now, it looks like we have a lot of guards on this roster. And you're right, we do have a lot of guards on this roster. I don't really know what the future holds for Marcus Sasser. I assume the Detroit Pistons want to bring Danius Jenkins back. I do. I like the pick for the Detroit Pistons to trade up to get Ebuka Okorie. To me, he is the best downhill driver in this draft class. And Trajan, last week when he talked to the media, when he was asked about what type of player or what type of skill sets he's looking for in this draft, he said, I'm looking for playmaking. And that is Ebuka Okorie. He had a very high assist to turnover ratio at Stanford, insanely high. He can take care of the basketball, a blur in the open court, transition nightmare. I think the reason why I like the pick so much for the Pistons is he's going to be able to get prime real estate in the paint and throw dump off passes to a Cade Cunningham, throw passes to Ausar Thompson that's cutting. Like, he's a very good facilitator, and he can create his own shot as well. That's what I kind of want to get into next. Like, when you watch him, like, don't watch the highlights, because I think sometimes we fall victim to just watching highlights and having an opinion about a player. Go turn on the Stanford game. His handles remind you, if you guys have ever played basketball at your local park or your local Lifetime Fitness, whatever it may be, he has got like playground handles, like and one type of handles. Like, he's got that ball on his string. And he's able to get to the free throw line as well at a pretty high rate. And 180, 85, 185 pounds, like, he's gonna fill out pretty nicely. He was a freshman at Stanford. Obviously, Stanford didn't have the best team, so I think a lot of people are looking at his stats and kind of determining whether or not this is a good pick. They are. Again, I like the pick for the Pistons. I like his ability to facilitate. I like his ability to take care of the basketball. When we talk about this team last year at every post-game podcast, what did we talk about, you guys? Turnovers. Ebuka Okorie is going to be able to handle the basketball and take care of the basketball. And Trajan had a quote that makes me think this kid's going to be a contributor in JB Bickerstaff's rotation. We'll get into that Trajan quote in a little bit. Say that 5 times fast at 1 a.m. It's a tongue twister. I apologize. But that's just my overall reactions with this pick by Trajan Langdon and the Detroit Pistons. Now, I did mention there are some quotes from Ebuka Okorie, and these were quotes from the Detroit Pistons credential media members that were down at the practice facility. He called in. These reporters asked him some questions. We will probably see him in person, I would assume, over the next 24 to 48 hours after the trade is official. Trajan said that the trade is still pending, and that's very normal with the NBA draft. After the trade is official, we'll probably hear from Ebuka Okorie. I assume it'll get done pretty soon, personally. But let's kind of get into some of these quotes. One of the first quotes is about how he kind of can fit in this Detroit Pistons system. And the quote says, I feel like alongside Cade, I'll be another playmaker on the floor, another shot creator, able to create for myself and others. And on the defensive end, just bringing intensity and using my physicality and getting into the passing lanes. So, like I mentioned earlier, he's a great playmaker. He can create his own shot. He can find the open man, a lot of dump off passes, a blur in transition. And I think on the defensive side, you'll see this guy playing like this, picking up full court. Like, that's just the type of defender that you're getting in Ebuka Okorie. And I think there are situations where Okorie can bring the ball up the floor and Cade can play off ball. Not to say that you don't want the ball in Cade Cunningham's hands, but you saw that a lot with JB Bickerstaff using Ausar Thompson more as a ball handler. Sometimes you saw that with Karis LeVert as well, and Cade was playing off ball. I think there's a lot of different lineup combinations that you can use with Okorie. I mean, you even saw Danish Jenkins do it too. So that's the first quote from Ebuka. Another quote was about his shooting. Now, I think his three-point shot is still in the development process, but there are good signs of him becoming a good three-point shooter in the NBA. He said, quote, "I'm going to stay in the gym, continue to work on my game. I'm not worried about my shooting at all." There was a video recently when he was working with his trainer, and they just kind of went around in an empty gym. And I get it's an empty gym. There's no hand in his face. So kind of take it with a grain of salt. But he made like 26 out of 33s is, going around the perimeter. And if you guys watch his three-point shot, it's a pretty fluid three-point shot. So that's the part of his game that I think will be a work in progress. I still think he will make threes going into his rookie year. But that was kind of one of the quotes talking about his three-point shooting. One of the last quotes was about his confidence. And this is what he had to say about why he is a confident basketball player. The quote, "A lot of my confidence and the comfortability comes from the reps. I'm repping out pick and roll, knowing what defenders I'm reading, and trying to make the best play possible for myself and teammates." One thing I really like about him is how he does operate out of the pick and roll. I mentioned earlier, he takes care of the basketball, had a very high assist rate at Stanford. And Stanford didn't really have a whole lot of talent surrounding him. When you give him players on this roster like a Jalen Duren, like a Cade Cunningham, who knows who we add in free agency. I mean, we talked about Norm Powell as a possibility that maybe could be a sign and trade with Miami Heat. I don't know if the Tyler Hero conversations are still ongoing. Shams Charania said today it sounds like that Milwaukee does want to hold on to him and keep him, and they would have to be wowed by a deal. But Trajan keeps mentioning that they'll continue to be aggressive in making this basketball team better. I mean, like, what happens when you kind of give him, a lethal three-point shooter in the backcourt next to him? What happens when you give him a active lob threat? I think this kid is going to be really good. And I think a lot of people, if they're going to be tuning into Summer League, you'll see why the Detroit Pistons did select him and trade up with the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, Trajan Langdon had a couple of quotes with the media, and this is one of the first quotes of what he likes about Ebuka Okorie. He says, quote, "Anybody that can push the pace the way he can and come in with the second unit will make the game easier for a lot of people, and he can pick up full court and press opposing ball handlers." Now, the reason why I highlighted come in with the second unit, I understand we have Danish Jenkins. I understand we have Marcus Sasser, right? Here's the thing. Trajan is very careful with how he articulates anytime he talks to the media. He says, "Come in with the second unit." We did not have a backup point guard going into last season. You had Jaden Ivey, who was coming off of arthroscopic surgery, or I'm sorry, not an arthroscopic surgery. He was coming off of a broken leg. He later had arthroscopic surgery. Wanted to correct myself there. And then you had Karis LeVert, and we were kind of told Karis is going to kind of play point guard this year. And I really didn't like the fit. I thought we needed a legitimate backup point guard. And that's why I was kind of bummed that we let Dennis Schroeder go. But that's beside the point. He's saying that Ebuka Okorie can come in with a second unit. And you can come in with the second unit. And a lot of guys on the second unit right now are in a lot of trade talks, like Isaiah Stewart, Ryan Holland. Don't know if Javonte Green's coming back. But you can kind of lead that second unit and be the backup point guard. Now, I think some Pistons fans might be under the opinion that Does JB Bickerstaff really trust a rookie to lead the second unit? We're going to have to wait and see what does happen in Pistons training camp and what does happen throughout the season. But Trajan believes that this is a kid that can come in, contribute right away as a bench backup point guard. There could be situations where he's out there closing games with Cade Cunningham. Really depends on how much JB Bickerstaff does trust him and the leash that he does give him. But I thought that was very telling that Trajan Langdon says come in with the second unit, because I think a lot of people right now are under the assumption that the backup point guard is Danish Jenkins. So interesting to say the very least. I mean, who's to say that those two can't play in the backcourt together? Danish Jenkins is 6'4". Who knows? I think they could have a lot of different guard combinations. Okay, the last quote from Trajan Langdon. Now, he was asked, with the draft acquisition, trading up to select Okorie at 17, does this change how you're going to attack your offseason? And Trajan said, quote, we'll continue to look to get better. He helps us moving forward, but we will continue to be aggressive and look for ways to get better, end quote. I think this offseason, what we've seen by the Detroit Pistons, you guys, is this is a team right now that just came off a 60-win season. They know that they have to get better. The organization knows that they can't stand pat, and I think a lot of Pistons fans right now, with it being offseason, they're seeing all these trades. Like, we'll get into the Giannis trade a little bit later with how the Eastern Conference kind of looks like, the landscape of like what people think is or what people think which teams are going to be coming out of the East. But they understand, like, they have to get Cade Cunningham more help in the scoring department. Cade Cunningham was absolutely gassed in Game 7 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Trajan has mentioned, like, we have to get better, and we have to, try to get out of the second round. We have to, be aggressive and find areas where we can improve. Trajan is not against improving this roster. What he's not going to do, though, is overpay for a lot of these conversations that I see on social media. Like, I saw someone today, this is completely off topic, saying like offer 4 firsts and a star for Trey Murphy. And I laughed at it. I was like, no GM is doing that. It's not 2K, right? You're just not going to do that. But if there are areas where it does make sense, where you feel like you're coming out and you're not, cutting yourself off a couple years out, then yeah, you are going to find areas to get better. I still think they are going to look to get Cade at that 20 point per game score next to him, whether that is in the backcourt at the shooting guard position or whether that's at a power forward position as well. Because I think those are the two positions that we always talk about on these podcasts of how can the Detroit Pistons get better? How can they fill out their starting five where there's not as much weaknesses on it? And I think, to me, the two positions I would look at, you guys, whether that's in trade or via free agency or sign and trade, is shooting guard and power forward. So I did want to put that on the screen. Second round, let's kind of talk about that. So second round will be tomorrow. Now, the Detroit Pistons currently do not have a second round pick. I mentioned earlier we have 12 second round picks, but we do not have a second round pick this year. Now, some notable names that are still available in the second round, you guys. Isaiah Evans. That was a prospect a lot of you guys were very high on. You thought he could be in range at 21 for the Detroit Pistons. He is still on the board. I assume he will be selected very fast tomorrow in the second round. We talk about getting more three-point shooters. Isaiah Evans does play between a shooting guard and a small forward. I think he projects more as a shooting guard, though, in my personal opinion. Isaiah Evans is still on the board for day 2 of the second round tomorrow. Malik Thomas, another guy that a lot of you guys had mentioned for the Detroit Pistons. I understand it. He's a bucket getter as well. He's a little bit on the shorter side, though, 6'3", but if you don't really mind the height, Malik Thomas is a hell of a player. Some other notable players, Richie Saunders out of BYU. He's a little bit older. He'll be about 25 by the time the NBA season does start. He did have a really nasty injury at BYU. So maybe that's why he did not get drafted in the first round today, and his age possibly. If you're looking at center, which I don't really know why the Pistons would look at center, Henry Vassar out of North Carolina, 7 foot big, can stretch the floor a little bit. He's probably going to be one of those early second round picks that could be selected. I know the Detroit Pistons brought in Dylan Mitchell for a pre-draft workout. He's currently projected to go in the 40s in the second round. That's a guy that they could look at in the second round. I'm just going through a couple other prospects that I see that are still kind of just floating around. I do see another shooting guard out of Louisville, Ryan Conwell. I mean, he's another one that I think could be in range. I don't really know, like outside of Isaiah Evans and Malik Thomas and Henry Vassar, I don't really see too many targets that the Pistons could get into, especially with Isaiah Evans and Malik Thomas. I mean, those are like 30s, like really early second round. You'd probably have to package a couple if you really wanted them. I don't really see too many other second round players that the Pistons could trade back up in the second round. I do expect them to be very, very active in the undrafted free agency market because a lot of our pre-draft workouts, we were bringing in prospects that weren't ranked in the top 60. A lot of these prospects were ranked either in the 70s or 80s. And the undrafted free agency market will be more of like summer league guys, possibly two-way contract guys, Motor City Cruise roster players that they'll look to add. But I'd be very surprised if you see the Pistons do trade up in the second round, unless they absolutely love Isaiah Evans and Malik Thomas. Like, I think those are two guys that can just fill it up. They can score. But those are two guys that I would look at. But outside of that, there's not too many guys in the second round that I'd be jumping up and pounding the table for if I'm a Detroit Piston fan. Before we do wrap up this podcast, we have to hear from our sponsors over at FanDuel. And we have brand new NBA Eastern Conference predictions and winner odds. So with the Giannis trade, the Celtics are only favored by a plus 220. The defending champ New York Knicks are at a plus 270. Miami Heat jumps up to third with a plus 650. Pistons are right behind them at a plus 800. Then you have the Indiana Pacers and the Cleveland Cavaliers, both at 1,400 each. Again, I don't know why Boston is favored to win the East. I just don't. Like, I think the Knicks have a better shot of winning the East because they're basically going to run it back. They might lose Mitchell Robinson in free agency, but who knows? Maybe he signs a hometown discount. But I like seeing the Pistons up there. The plus 800 actually might be kind of underrated if you ask me. I think the Pistons are going to be very competitive this year. I think they're going to be at least a top 4 team in the East, even though you have a healthy Tyrese Halliburton and a healthy Jason Tatum coming back. But it'll be interesting to see how free agency unfolds. I expect the Pistons this week to be very active in the trade market. I think how they fill out the roster, you guys, is they'll be way more active in trades than they will in free agency. Free agency, they're kind of limited. After that Jalen Duren extension does kick in, he's probably going to take up a good 90% of your cap space, and any type of cap space that you do have will just be vet minimums. So, and you have a mid-level exception. But it really depends on how the Detroit Pistons want to fill out this roster. I just think it'll be more in the trade market because we do have free agency starting very, very soon, and then summer league. So NBA offseason, baby. It's nothing like it. It's so much fun. But hope you guys did enjoy this short 25-minute episode of the draft selection of Ebuka Okorie. Some quotes from him, quotes from Trajan, and the trade breakdown. We will actually be doing another podcast tomorrow. We're going to be having on Paige Otto who is a NBA draft analyst at No Ceilings. I know you guys really loved when she was on a couple of weeks ago. We're going to be picking her brain with this selection with Ebuka Okorie and just kind of breaking down the NBA draft of, maybe some shockers who slipped, who went where. But hope you guys do have a great rest of your night. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.